วัสดีครับ Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nakarin Piamwanapakin, Pharma North pharmacist. On behalf of Pharma North, I would like to thank you all and welcome to today's academic sessions. Today, we are honored to welcome an esteemed speaker from Denmark, Dr. Stig Larsen, who will share his expertise on a topic of growing importance, selenium and coenzyme Q10, the best supplement combo for cardiovascular protection and anti-aging in senior. This is a topic that provides valuable insight for enhancing senior health. Let me briefly introduce our speaker today. Our speaker today is Dr. Stig Larsen. He is an associate professor at the University of Copenhagen in the Department of Biomedical Science. Dr. Larsen earned his Doctor of Medical Science degree at the University of Copenhagen, where he also completed his Master in Human Physiology and Bachelor in Chemistry. He is widely respected for his groundbreaking research in mitochondrial function and metabolism. With over 100 publications in leading journals like Diabetology and Nature Communications. Dr. Larsen extensive research into how lifestyle factors and supplements affect mitochondrial function and whole body metabolism is directly related to today's topics. His work has shed light on how nutrients like selenium and coenzyme Q10 interact to support cardiovascular health and combat the aging process, especially in senior populations. This research is especially relevant as we seek effective preventive strategies to support healthy aging. Beyond this, Dr. Larsen currently work also includes studying the effects of treatments like semaglutide on mitochondrial health and examining how supplements can provide measurable health benefits to older populations. His labs focus on translating cellular function into practical health strategies that make him the ideal expert to discuss the anti-aging and cardiovascular protective effects of selenium and coenzyme Q10. So I would like now to turn the session over to Dr. Stig Larsen, who will lead us through his presentation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stig Larsen. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the invitation to come and talk about a very relevant topic. So as introduced, I'm going to talk a little bit about selenium and coenzyme Q10 in relation to cardiovascular protection and anti-aging for seniors. As mentioned, I'm affiliated to the University of Copenhagen, and instead of talking about anti-aging, I actually more like talking about healthy aging, because I think that's a way better word to use. So why is it that this combination is good, and why is it relevant to actually focus on? So as we look on cardiovascular disease and aging, then we can see that when you turn 70 or 80, then the increase in major cardiovascular diseases is increasing, and death from cardiovascular disease is also increasing at the age of 80. So this is, of course, something that is relevant for the society in order to try to get people to live as long as possible, but be healthy in the same way. And when looking at the population today, then in 2015, we saw that around 12% of the population worldwide was 60 plus of age. And if you look into the future, then it seems like in 2050, that number will increase to around 22% of the world's population. So this will have a major impact on society, a major impact on economy in the different countries. So in Denmark, we are looking into healthy aging. So we are running together with Morten Skejby, a close collaborator of mine. We are looking into aging research and drug discovery. And this is a meeting that is held every year, which is very important. Furthermore, we are also looking more and more into aging in the Nordic countries of Europe, where we have made this society for Nordic Aging Society. And the interesting thing is that at the moment we are actually starting up a completely new study where we want to look at a lot of people from the age of 25 until 90, 95, depending on how old we can recruit them. For this cohort, we want to look into aging biomarkers in order to try to make an estimation of a person's biological age. For that, we will look into different samples of different markers in the blood, so selenium and coenzyme Q10, as I'm going to talk a lot about today, but also inflammatory markers. And then also DNA methylation, body composition, and VO2 max, because it has been reported that the ability to take up a lot of oxygen during exercise is actually one of the best predictors of biological age. So with this, we will try to look into, first describe the biological age by using those different markers, and then we will recruit from the 1,000 people, we will recruit 250 people at the age of 65 plus years. And then we will put them into different groups. So we will have a control group that we follow over 10 years. Then we have a fasting group, because it has been reported a lot, at least in animal models, that fasting is prolonging your life. Then we will have an exercise group, because we all know that exercise is very, very good for you, but we also know that exercise is difficult to maintain. And then we will have a fasting and exercise group, and then we will have a supplementation group. And then we will, as you can see over here to the right of your slide, we will have the intervention period, which is 1 year, where they're going to do exercise intervention, fasting intervention, and supplementation. And then we will follow the same cohort for 10 years afterwards. And why is it that VO2 max is important for your aging? That is something that we have done in a previous study, where we actually report that the most important thing when growing old is actually to be able to maintain a high oxygen uptake. And that measurement can be done on a bicycle, where you ask people to bike as long as you can until you're not longer capable of doing that. But we can also actually do it with a small device that you put on the chest, and then you measure this for around 3 or 4 minutes. And then you can actually estimate the maximal oxygen uptake. And interestingly enough, if you compare those two measures, so this on the y-axis, on the x-axis, sorry, this is measured where you actually exercise test them until they cannot do it anymore. And if you correlate that to the SeismoFit here, you can actually see that the algorithm used now has a very, very nice correlation. And I think that this measurement is important for healthy aging, and it's a measure that will increase when you're doing exercise interventions, which is something, as mentioned, we all know is good. So when talking about aging, then there are different hallmarks of aging. And this scheme is actually, there are different hallmarks added during time. But today I will talk about telomere length, because we know that at the chromosomes, there are at the ends, there are telomeres that is shortening with life. And this is a good hallmark of aging. So the shorter your telomeres are, the older you are. And there has actually been studies reporting that if you're doing an exercise intervention, then your telomeres is actually not reduced in length to the same extent as if you're not doing exercise intervention. So this is one hallmark of aging. Another hallmark of aging is inflammation, that we know is increasing with age. And now there has been a new word invented called inflammaging, which is inflammation in the older population. And interestingly, also in relation to this hallmark, that systemic inflammation is reduced after exercise. And then the last hallmark I want to talk a little bit about today is mitochondrial dysfunction. And I actually think that this hallmark is linked to at least inflammation, but also other hallmarks of aging. And when talking about mitochondrial function or dysfunction, then we all know that mitochondria are responsible for energy production. We also know that it is linked to inflammation, and we also know that it is linked to oxidative stress. And there has been a lot of studies reporting that mitochondrial dysfunction is associated with cardiovascular disease. So it seems like the mitochondria is important in many, many aspects of the aging process. And again, if you look at exercise, then we know that oxidative stress is reduced when you're doing exercise, but we also know that the antioxidative capacity is increased with exercise. So as you can see here, a lot of the hallmarks of aging is that actually related to the fact that you are more physical inactive. And we all know that being physical active is very, very difficult to implement in your daily life. And that's why maybe we can start to discuss the effects of diet supplementations. So when looking at cardiovascular disease and aging, if you look into the clinical viewpoint, then we know that if we're looking at hypertension, diabetes, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, then the risk of cardiovascular disease increases. And as I mentioned before, when you go into the molecular levels, we know that oxidative stress is a marker of cardiovascular disease and aging. And if you then take it a little bit further, if you are looking into the lab, then there are different measures. So telomere length, inflammation, and oxidative stress is something that is important for the aging heart. And if you then look at the clinical side of the aspects, then heart failure, arrhythmias, and cardiomyopathy is something that is seen out in the clinic, which has a massive effect on cardiovascular disease, but also something that is seen with aging. So why is it then that we think that selenium and coenzyme Q10 is important for healthy aging, and also in this regard to a reduction in cardiovascular disease? So at the moment, there are no recommendation of coenzyme Q10 in the Nordic nutrition recommendation. And when looking into selenium, then it is suggested to have a decent high number, and a decent high number that is a little bit fluffy, but I will come back to that later because that's important for many, many different diseases related to aging. So when looking at selenium, then it seems like the optimal concentration of selenium in the blood or in the serum is around 125 micrograms per liter. And you can see here that if you have that amount, then you have a low stress level, you have a low risk of type 2 diabetes, low cancer risk, low cognitive decline. But if you are low on this U-shaped curve, you can see that there are different diseases that is actually increasing. The same is the case if you are going to a high level in the plasma. If you are low, then you would recommend supplementation. But if you're high, that's another case. And if you then look into how this variation is in a US study, we can see that a serum concentration of around 140-45 micrograms per liter is potentially the point to be at. But you need to go high up in concentration before it gets toxic. And what is selenium used for? So selenium is important in regards to antioxidative properties. It's also very important for brain health, which is, of course, something that we see with aging, that your neurodegenerative diseases is increasing. It is also important for selenoproteins. So glutathione is one of the most used and investigated antioxidants, and selenoproteins is very important for this, but also thiols, which can be seen down here, is also important for the antioxidative capacity. So looking into this, it is that selenium is important both for cardiovascular disease, but also for aging, and very much important in the process of oxidative stress. And if you look at selenium concentrations, then it's highly dependent on how much selenium is in the soil. And if you look at this map on the top, you can see Denmark is up here, Thailand is down here, and we get close to sufficient amounts, but in Denmark we are a little bit deficient actually. If you then look at what happens in 85 years or so from now, or 60 years from now, it seems like the climate changes is actually having an impact on selenium in the soil, and that this impact is higher in Denmark compared out to Asia. So for me, it seems like selenium is very, very important, and there are few countries where you actually get enough selenium in the food to actually sustain and have the most optimal concentration. And when looking into what is happening in Europe, then we can see that in Denmark we have a selenium concentration of around 35 to 50 micrograms per day, and that is not enough. If we look at Finland, then it is a little bit higher, but they are also adding it to the fertilizers, which makes sense why they are higher than the rest of Europe. And if you look at the recommended daily allowance, then it's 55 micrograms per day. And if you then look at what is actually happening around Europe, then a big part of Europe where we have measured it is actually too low on selenium. When then looking into coenzyme Q10, we also know that the endogenous production of Q10 is reduced over the age. And you can see here that if you for example look at the heart, then at the age of 75 you actually have less than half of what you had in the early life. And the same is the case for other tissues. So for me, it seems like Q10 is low when you get older, and it also seems like it's very difficult for people to actually get enough selenium in the diet during a lifetime. So the biosynthesis of Q10 is coming from tyrosine and acetyl-CoA that at the end will produce Q10, but you also have the cholesterol pathway here. And looking at, for example, statin treatment, we know that statin treatment is reducing cholesterol in this pathway, but at the same time, you actually also see a reduction in coenzyme Q10 in the plasma. I'll get a little bit back to that later in this talk, but for sure, inhibiting cholesterol is very important for some patients, but reduction in coenzyme Q10 might not be that beneficial. So when talking about the biosynthesis, then what is the effect of coenzyme Q10 in metabolism? So one of the major things is that coenzyme Q10 is an electron carrier. So when you dig into the mitochondria, that's where the energy production is happening when using oxygen. And you can see here that when you are eating food and producing NADH and FADH2, that shuttles electrons via coenzyme Q10, and ATP is produced. So this is one of the very important things that coenzyme Q10 is responsible for. Another thing that is important is also that coenzyme Q10 acts as an antioxidant. So if you have an antioxidant, then you have a free electron, and if you have a free radical, you also have a free electron. But the free radical is very, very unstable, and this free radical can actually damage DNA and increase the aging process. So for an antioxidant with this free electron will pair with the free electron from the free radical, and then it will create a stable atom. And when looking into coenzyme Q10, then this antioxidative capacity is very important when talking about lipid peroxidation. So selenium and coenzyme Q10 in relation to aging, but also cardiovascular disease, one of the major effects is on antioxidants. So when digging a little bit deeper into cardiovascular disease, then in 1970, a study came out where a group of researchers investigated around 200 patients, and they found that those patients that were low on coenzyme Q10 in plasma also were low on tissue levels, and those patients were actually more prone for cardiovascular disease. So this is one of the early studies actually indicating that coenzyme Q10 is very important for cardiovascular disease. And then this big study came, the Q-Symbio study that was led by a group of researchers in Denmark, where they recruited patients with heart failure, and then they put them into a group that received coenzyme Q10 for 2 years and a group that received placebo. And as you can see here, the two groups were very well matched for different aspects that is important in relation to heart failure. And when looking at major adverse cardiovascular events after the 2 years, we could see that it was very, very beneficial to take coenzyme Q10. So this is also one of the studies that is supporting the fact that coenzyme Q10 is important in cardiovascular disease. So later on, there was a Swedish researcher that did the KISL-10 study, where he recruited participants from a city in Sweden and then asked them to either be in a group, it was of course randomized, but in a group with selenium and coenzyme Q10. And the group of participants were around 450 males and females, very well matched. And then they supplemented them for 4 years with 200 micrograms of selenium and 200 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 every day. And then the major outcome was cardiovascular mortality. And as you can see in this figure, those that took the diet supplementation actually saw reduced cardiovascular mortality compared to those that did not. So this was the main study from this KISL-10 study. But then it has been reported later on that the blood sample stored in these patients has actually been used for many, many follow-up studies. So at the moment, there are more than 25 follow-up studies looking into different aspects of cardiovascular disease, but also different aspects of aging. And I will go through some of those results now. So they recruited from this city in Sweden 400 and close to 50 participants, and then they matched them in the active and the placebo group, so that it wasn't a matter of disease and activity that was responsible for the results. And when looking into cardiovascular mortality, then in this study, they looked into a group of the participants with a low number of selenium in the blood, a group with a medium, and a group with a high concentration of selenium. And as you can see here, looking into ischemic heart disease, we can see that those participants with a low level of selenium in the blood is actually more prone to get ischemic heart disease. When you then look into how they respond when you provide them with selenium, we can see that no matter if you are low to begin with or you are high, then you actually see an increase to the same extent of selenium. And as we talked about before, the optimal concentration in plasma is around 140 to 150 micrograms per liter. And if you supplement people with selenium 200 micrograms a day, you actually see that they get up to around 200 micrograms per liter. And that is not an issue in relation to toxicity. So if you then look into cardiovascular mortality, this is a figure where they looked at it 7 years after initiation of the study. So you should remember here that the first 4 years they are supplemented, and then they are just left by themselves, the participants. And you can see that the cardiovascular mortality is way better in the supplemented group compared to the placebo group after the 7 years. When then looking into what happens 8 years after the supplementation, so this is a follow-up study on the long-term protection of supplementation with selenium and coenzyme Q10. So this is again where they have been not supplemented for 8 years. And when looking again at long-term protection and mortality, we can see again that the active treated group is responding way better in relation to cardiovascular mortality. But also, if you look at people with ischemic heart disease, the picture is the same, that you actually benefit 8 years after the intervention period. And again, the same is seen if you do the same in patients with type 2 diabetes. So for sure, supplementation with coenzyme Q10 and selenium in this study is very beneficial for these outcomes. So what happens if we then look at inflammation? And again, we're looking at inflammation in the same cohort of participants. And when doing this and looking at CRP, we can see up here that the placebo group is increasing a little bit from baseline until 4 years after the supplementation. But you can also see underneath that the active group is actually reducing their CRP levels to a high degree, which is beneficial when it comes to cardiovascular disease or heart cardiovascular risk. So if you look at this slide, then you can see that if you have around 4 milligrams per liter of CRP in your blood, then you are at a high risk of developing cardiovascular disease. So in this study, after 4 years of supplementation with the active treatment, selenium and coenzyme Q10, you actually reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease. So in relation to inflammation, a marker for aging, then for sure, this combo of selenium and Q10 is important. If we then look into what happens with CRP, so if you are a male or a female, then you can see if you are a female, then it increases very much. You can also see that something happens with the males, but there is a huge variation in this measure. And when looking into inflammation and aging, then it has a lot of different impacts. So on cardiovascular disease, as we talked about before, metabolic diseases, neurological diseases, and so on. So inflammation is something that we should be aware of and that we should try to keep as low as possible. So what happens if you look at inflammation and exercise? Because you can lower your inflammation by taking this diet supplementation, but you can actually also do it with exercise. So if you look at the inflammatory load in the adipocyte, then we know that doing exercise gets your adipocytes to decrease, and then the inflammatory load is reduced. The same is the case in the skeletal muscle, where the inflammatory load is reduced with exercise. And that this inflammatory load actually leads to a better glucose transport and a better glucose metabolism. So why is it that we don't just do exercise? And we all know that it is good for you and your body to do exercise, but it's also very, very difficult to implement this in your daily life. And that's why that the diet supplementation might be an advantage. What happens when you look at oxidative stress, a hallmark of aging as well, and also implemented in cardiovascular disease? So again, a sub-study from the KIESL-10 study looked at thiols. So thiols are important in order to keep oxidative stress levels down. So if we look at this glutathione pathway here, then these thiols are important in order to remove free radicals and reduce oxidative stress. And we can see here that those free thiols are actually increased after 4 years of supplementation compared to the placebo group. So again, a beneficial effect of the supplementation. If you then look at oxidative stress and aging, then we know that in some studies, oxidative stress increases with age. And we know that this oxidative stress is related to many different diseases. So atherosclerosis, cancer, obesity, inflammation, and also neurodegenerative disorders. And it's actually interesting to look into the data, because if you look into Alzheimer's disease and supplementation with coenzyme Q10, we actually see that that's beneficial for these patients. We also see that if you look into plasma coenzyme Q10 in relation to depression, which is something that is also increasing these years, then there is also a positive effect of coenzyme Q10 supplementation. So when looking at oxidative stress and again exercise, then we know that aging increases oxidative stress, and aging also leads to reduced muscle strength and muscle mass. And this is actually very important for many, many different diseases. It leads to frailty and disability. And we know if you are doing exercise and potentially strength training, that's very important for muscle mass and muscle strength. So again, we can see that exercise in relation to oxidative stress is important and it's beneficial, and the same was shown before in relation to the supplementation. And if we then dig into another study looking into exercise, then this is 10 weeks of resistance training in 60+ years participants. They are doing it 3 times a week for a little bit more than an hour per session. And when looking at oxidative stress markers down here, you can see that those two groups that is doing exercise is actually reducing oxidative stress. And this is potentially linked to the increase in antioxidants seen over here, which is a positive effect. And an interesting thing is also, if you then look at questionnaires related to quality of life, we actually see that doing exercise is improving quality of life compared to the controls as seen over here. Whether this is only due to the exercise or it's also due to the social interaction while doing exercise, that has not been looked at in this study. Then coming back to aging and telomere length, as I briefly discussed at the beginning, then this is one of the most investigated things in relation to aging, that the telomeres are shortening with age. And in the Kiesel 10 study, they did it in a subgroup of participants, so only 77 in each group. But still, when looking at the telomere length, then you can see that the red bars here, that's those that are treated with the Q10 and selenium. And here you don't see a reduction after 3.5 years compared to those that are not supplemented. And it doesn't matter if you are male or female. So again, a positive effect on a marker of aging. When then looking at telomere length and exercise, then if looking at aerobic exercise over here, combination of aerobic and strength exercise, and then strength exercise alone, we can see here that when doing aerobic exercise, this favors the experimental condition. So the telomere length is actually increased or not as much shortened after exercise compared to the controls when doing aerobic exercise. But you can see if you combine strength exercise, then you don't see any beneficial things, which is a little bit unlucky, because we know that strength training in relation to aging is important for muscle mass. But when you then pool all these data, it seems like it is beneficial, but it is driven by the aerobic group. And the most interesting and maybe a little bit sad thing about this is that if you look at exercise interventions that has been going on for more than 6 months, then we see an adaptation on telomere length. Whereas when looking at shorter studies, then we actually don't see any beneficial effects. So it seems like you need to do exercise. You need to continue doing exercise actually to see this improvement in telomere length, something that has been reported again, that has been seen with the Q10 and the selenium supplementation. Another important marker of aging is sirtuin-1, which is linked to NAD plus metabolism, but also to mitochondrial biogenesis. And in this subgroup of the Kiesel-10 study, again, they looked into this and saw that sirtuin-1 activity or content is actually increased a lot after 4 years of the supplementation, whereas nothing is happening with the placebo group. And if you then look at mortality 10 years after the inclusion of the study, we can actually see that those participants in the study that was low after 4 months of sirtuin-1 is actually also those that are not surviving, as well as those with high levels of sirtuin-1. So again, something that is important for aging and something that is improved with supplementation. So we all have heard about resveratrol, which is a compound in red wine. They have the same effect of sirtuin-1. So selenium seems to have beneficial effect on sirtuin-1 as shown before, which is important for metabolism, adipose tissue, cell aging, and so on. And at the end, that will extend your lifespan. And when looking at selenium in an acute kidney injury study here, we can see that selenium increases sirtuin-1. So it's not only one study that actually shows this. And then at the end leads to reduced ROS and reduced apoptosis. When then going back to can we increase sirtuin-1 with exercise, then this review actually reports that if you look into the blood and looking at sirtuin-1, you actually see an increase after exercise, and you see the same in the skeletal muscle. So again, another factor where you can see that exercise is beneficial and it's doing some of the same things as the coenzyme Q10 and selenium supplementation. When looking at quality of life, then when looking at a whole group, this is a busy slide, but there are things that are going a little bit up and improved, and also some that are going down in the placebo group. But if you go in and match the participants more specific for different diseases, then you can see that the number of participants is way lower. But if you're doing this and looking at quality of life, then we can actually see that different markers of quality of life is improved with the supplementation. And if you look at overall quality of life, it actually seems like supplementation is beneficial compared to placebo. So again, this is, in my mind, an important measure of many of the studies that is looking into mechanically and cellular levels of different markers, that if you can measure an improvement in quality of life, that's something that we all need to be aware of. And when then going into looking at quality of life during an exercise, then we know that if you are 65 plus years of age, then there is a strong correlation in relation to quality of life. And again, if this is depending on the exercise per se, or is it a combination of the exercise, but also the social interaction, that's difficult to say. If you then look at the same thing with dementia, we don't see any strong correlation, but there is actually a moderate correlation when looking into physical activity and quality of life when looking into Parkinson's disease. So what happens if you then go into a study where we have looked at breast cancer patients and supplementing them with coenzyme Q10 and looking at quality of life? Then they can actually report that as little as 8 weeks of supplementation has an impact on quality of life in this group of patients. So something to consider for sure. Then switching on to another thing, that coenzyme Q10 deficiencies. So if you look at coenzyme Q10 deficiencies, then you can split it up in primary and secondary deficiencies. And if it is the primary deficiency we are talking about, then it's a mutation in genes involved in the biosynthesis of Q10, whereas the secondary could be either impairment in biosynthesis, that could, for example, be statin treatment. But when looking into the primary coenzyme Q10 deficiency, then the onset of these diseases, you can see here that they are starting early in life, and you can see that the genes that are involved over here. And if you look into a review made 10 years ago, we can actually see that looking into gene mutations in relation to primary coenzyme Q10 deficiency, if you supplement those patients with coenzyme Q10, it actually seems like most of these conditions that the patients are responding very well to coenzyme Q10 supplementation. When looking at a secondary coenzyme Q10 deficiency, then one thing could be statins, as we talked about before. So statins are important in order to reduce cholesterol. And that is very, very, very beneficial, and it has a major impact on cholesterol levels. But you can also see here that when taking statins, you reduce as expected cholesterol, but it also has an impact of coenzyme Q10. And we know that different side effects with statin treatment is actually myalgia and muscle cramps. And it also seems like development of type 2 diabetes is higher in the group taking statins. So these side effects are something that we should be aware of. And what happens if you then add coenzyme Q10 to this statin treatment in relation to muscle complaints? This review from 2018 reports that if you take statins and you supplement with coenzyme Q10, you can actually see that muscle pain is reduced, muscle weakness is reduced, muscle cramps and muscle tiredness is reduced. So in this sense, it makes sense to actually add coenzyme Q10 to statin-treated patients, because you can take a high dose of Q10 without being worried of toxicity. So this review is important for me, and it's something that we should consider when treating patients with statins. And this is the combination of coenzyme Q10 and selenium to see if there is an additive effect on these two compounds. And if you look at coenzyme Q10 after 3 months of supplementation, we see an approximately 4-fold increase in plasma Q10. And we can also see that if you add 200 micrograms of selenium for 3 months, you see an increase up to a little bit below 150 micrograms per liter. And if we remember this figure from early on in the presentation, then that's potentially the optimal concentration in plasma. When then looking into those muscle complaints and looking up here, then we can see that the top one is active selenium and coenzyme Q10. And I know this is a small study population, but we can see that adding coenzyme Q10 and selenium actually decreases muscle complaints in 9 out of 10 participants. If we only look at the coenzyme Q10 supplement with the placebo selenium, we see a reduction in 8 out of 12 patients. So potentially there is a small additive effect on the selenium compound as well here. And if you then look into one of the other side effects of statin treatment, then we know that the HOMA-ER index, that's a measure of glucose homeostasis related to type 2 diabetes. If we look at Q10 supplementation, we can actually see that that supplementing with Q10 is beneficial in relation to blood glucose levels. So again, if we look at this, then we can see that supplementation with coenzyme Q10 is beneficial for fasting glucose, fasting insulin, HbA1c, but also this HOMA-ER index, which is important for development of type 2 diabetes. Then another thing is that fibromyalgia, that is an disease that is very difficult to diagnose, but it seems like it affects up to around 5% of the general population. And it has also been reported that oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction is thought to be involved in this disease. And the treatment options at the moment now is to sleep a little bit more, do exercise, and then eat a healthy diet. And as we have discussed the last period of time, we know that exercise and diet is important and something that we all should consider, but we also know that it is very difficult to actually implement it. So what happens to fibromyalgia if you add coenzyme Q10 supplementation in these patients? And this has been done, and you can see it's in 10 participants, so it's a small study, but it has been done for 40 days, and it has been added with 300 milligrams per day. And if we look at this and look at a questionnaire for pain and fatigue, we can see that those groups that are supplemented with coenzyme Q10 is actually reducing pain, reducing fatigue, reducing anxiety and depression compared to the placebo group. And when looking at different inflammatory markers, again, here we have this, authors have taken a healthy control group, but we can actually see that those participants with fibromyalgia that is treated with coenzyme Q10 is actually reducing their inflammatory levels down to the level of the healthy controls. So it seems like coenzyme Q10 supplementation could have an effect on patients with fibromyalgia. So the take-home message for this presentation is that when looking at selenium and coenzyme Q10 supplementation, then it seems like it's beneficial for cardiovascular disease. In relation to aging, it is reducing oxidative stress, potentially also improving quality of life, and then also having an effect on glucose metabolism. And all these things you can also treat, so to say, with exercise, but that's a difficult thing to do. And then when looking at primary and secondary coenzyme Q10 deficiency, then my take is that coenzyme Q10 supplementation is beneficial, and due to the fact that you can increase your amount of coenzyme Q10 ingested to a high degree, then I can't see why we shouldn't do it. So with that, I would like to say thank you, and I'm happy to take questions. So if patients should be screened for coenzyme Q10 deficiency before using this supplement, I would say no, because you can take a high concentration of oral coenzyme Q10 without any harmful effect. So my answer to that should be no. That you can, as long as you're taking not too high levels, maybe 100 or 200 milligrams per day. And if you take 200, then you should split it into 2 doses. Then I think it should be fine. And for the next question, if you use a dose of coenzyme Q10 for 300 milligrams a day, if that can have side effects. So that has not been shown in any studies that doses at 300 milligrams would have any side effects. So that's also a no. Yeah. So if looking into supplementation, then it has been reported that going as high as 3 grams per day, it actually doesn't have any side effects. So I don't think that with the doses that Pharma Nord recommends, then I wouldn't be worried about that. I think that there has been studies looking into IV administration of selenium. Inorganic selenium, yeah. Yeah. Any concern of what kind of patients that you not recommend taking this? So for the Q10, on top of my head, I can't come up with patients where you should be worried about it. And in relation to selenium, then you need very, very high doses in order to see toxicity. So on top of my head, I cannot come up with the patients that I would be concerned about. I haven't seen any studies with Ipitalon in relation to telomere lengthening, but it can be that there are studies out there, but I haven't seen them. So explain type 2 diabetes in relation to coenzyme Q10. So it is known that if patients with type 2 diabetes, they have an increased production of free radicals. So one of the hallmarks, if you can say, of type 2 diabetes, it's not one certain point, but it is shown that patients with type 2 diabetes is having a higher oxidative stress level. So in this regard, I think that using Q10 as an antioxidant is beneficial for type 2 diabetes. But there's also, of course, a lot of other important things that are linked to type 2 diabetes. But one of them is oxidative stress, and that's why coenzyme Q10 could be beneficial. Can coenzyme Q10 apply in patients who are on warfarin? That I don't know. That I don't know.
Thank you very much, Dr. Larsen ครับก็ขอบคุณคุณหมอทุกท่านนะครับแล้วก็ที่ท่านผู้เข้าร่วมฟังบรรยายในวันนี้นะครับผมหวังเป็นอย่างยิ่งนะครับว่าการบรรยายในวันนี้จะเป็นประโยชน์กับทุกท่านนะครับแล้วก็ Pharma-Nord เนี่ยเป็นผู้ผลิตผลิตภัณฑ์เสริมอาหารและผลิตภัณฑ์ยาของประเทศเดนมาร์กนะครับซึ่งเราค่อนข้างให้ความสำคัญกับการวิจัยทางการแพทย์แล้วก็ผลิตภัณฑ์ของเราเนี่ยมีงานวิจัยในทางการแพทย์รองรับนะครับยังไงวันนี้ผมในนามของบริษัท Pharma-Nord ขอบคุณทุกท่านครับขอบคุณมากครับสวัสดีครับ